Alright, you're welcome to today's video. In this video I'm going to teach you how to make the skirt that you've seen at the beginning of the video. Now here on the table I have my skirt block. I skipped this step because I've already made a comprehensive video on how to draft a skirt block with different lengths. The link to that video will be the first link in the description in case you don't know how to draft the block. Alright, so here we have the skirt block. At the bottom of my paper, you can see that I made a little indication. There's an arrow, then +5. That +5 means the paper was not long enough to give me the length I need for the skirt. So I'm going to need to add extra 5 inches on the fabric. Now this 5 inches contains both the length of the skirt to complete the length and the hemming allowance at the bottom that we'll need to turn in. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's start to cut the skirt further. But the first step, draft the block. Alright, so first you have your skirt block, and then we're going to first make cuts, okay, to demarcate the 3 sections of the skirt, because as you've seen it, there's a top part that's actually like a short skirt, and then there's a little space, then the next, and then a little space before the part that completes the hem. So you need to know how long you want the first part of the skirt to be. If it's too short, you might be uncomfortable when you are wearing it around. So make sure to measure the full skirt length, and then you measure a comfortable length of a shorter skirt. So you're going to have 2 skirt lengths, because the first length, that's the main skirt from the waist to the first cut, is very important. Alright, so for me, starting from here, I'm going to use 17 inches as the first point. Alright, so I'm going to stop here. 17 inches is where I have the first cut on the skirt. Alright, and then what you're going to do is you're going to make a space of 4 inches. Alright, so from here, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's at 21. I made a mark. I'm going to make a mark like I've made, and then I'm going to come down a bit. And then you want the bottom half to be bigger than whatever you would have here. So this middle part will be a lot smaller. You will see how I cut it. So what we're going to do is this. From 21, we're going to keep only 5 inches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You make another mark. Then you keep another 4. Just follow me step by step here. Alright? 1, 2, 3. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Then roll lines across these points. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut. So with that, you can see that we've created the holes that we need. Though you saw me squeeze those ones and discard of them because I'm not going to need them. But make sure you keep a consistent amount of space. So that 4 inches, that's the space that we're going to use for the strands that will hold the top to the bottom together. So make sure that you have a consistent, if here is 4 inches, here should be 4 inches. So that, but you can play with it a bit. But if this is your first time doing it, I would say that you keep it 4 inches, 4 inches. Though you can make it longer, but you would have to be sure. Like if here is 4 inches, you are replacing back 4 inches. If the gap you kept here is 6 inches, you're going to have to replace back 6 inches. But I would like it if you keep, it will be easier if you keep both of the space that you keep even. Alright, now when we're cutting this on our fabric, the top part, for both the top and the top and the bottom, you're going to need to keep your fabric on a fold so that you cut 2 pieces for the back, and so that you cut this edge here as a folded edge. The same thing with here, and the same thing with here. Alright, so now you can say that, okay, since the bottom half is not going to have any zip or a slit or anything like that, why not just cut it off and cut everything on the fold? You can do that, but I will not want to do that because I want to have all the allowance I can have at the bottom in case I need to make slight adjustments. I can always use the sewing allowance I kept from top to bottom. I can always use it to open up the skirt or do all of that, as in to free up the bottom part so that movement will be easy, since the whole thing will be dancing around. So because of that, I'm not going to just use this pattern, because you can just use this front pattern and cut for the front and the back, since there is no slits at the bottom of the skirt and there is no what do you call it, yeah, since there's nothing going on after here, because this part here will hold the zip, but since there's nothing going on after here, you could use this one to cut everything, as in for this part, and use this top part to cut for this part. But I would still prefer to use this allowance kept here. I'll simply just seal it short, but if there's need for it, you have it. So that's why we're still going to use the bottom half of this. When you're cutting this on your fabric, at the bottom here, you're going to make sure you cut this with 1/2 inch. At the top here, we're going to cut this with 1/2 inch. Okay, the same thing here, we're going to cut the top with 1/2 inch. All right, and at the bottom of this one as well, 1/2 inch. When I'm cutting the straps, I'm not going to cut the straps at 4 inches. I'm going to cut it at 5 inches, 1/2 inch at the top for sewing allowance and 1/2 inch at the bottom. But you'll see that on the sewing machine. So let me go ahead and use my patterns to cut my fabric. So because I want the skirt to have form, since it's something where that that the bottom half will have a lot of movement, I want it to have form. So at the bottom, in fact the whole on every part of the fabric, I'm going to iron on lightweight woven fusible interfacing onto the fabric, that is stay if you're in Nigeria, and then on my lining I'm going to iron lightweight non-woven fusible interfacing. I think they call this a tissue stay or gum stay in Nigeria, but a very light one will be ironed onto my lining. And for my lining, I'm using cotton lining. I like to use cotton lining. I have more than I have more than 2 yards of lining there, and my fabric. I have 2 yards of fabric. I think I'm on the generator. So yeah, I would have shown you how I iron on the interfacing, but I've done that in a lot of videos. So just to simply iron on the side with the adhesive that has the adhesive. That's the side of the interfacing that has the Alright, the side of the interfacing that has the adhesive, simply put the wrong side of the fabric there and iron, and it should be good. So you can see I have the fabric here with the interfacing under it. Also the lining, the non-woven interfacing, has been ironed to the wrong side. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to simply just cut. Now because I'm cutting the front of the skirt, we want the edge on the front of the skirt to be folded, because you want it to come out as one piece, alright? But the back, you can cut it and it should be in 2 separate pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this. I would also cut all the other sides as well. So here we have the last part. I remember I had to add 5 inches to the length over here, so I'm going to do that. Don't forget to do that if you need to. Alright, and if you notice, I've been cutting with 1/2 inch allowance at the top and at the bottom of each of the pieces that I have cut. Alright, now we're done with the fabric. So we're cutting the fabric, sorry. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to have to make our darts. So you can simply just measure the front. This is approximately 8, so I'll keep my dart at 4 inches after the middle. Alright, so I'm going to make a notch here. And for the depth of that's the length of the dart, when I'm holding it, I'm going to hold the 4.5 inch dart at the front, and at the back I'll hold the 5 inch dart. It will be 1/2 inch thick, so the pinch I would make would be 1/2 inch in front and behind. Alright, so after you've held both of the darts like I have done, this is the back part of the skirt. You can see that it's in two pieces. What I'm going to do next is, you see this notch here? This notch here is telling me that this side, because here is curved and here is curved. If you've seen the video on how I draft my skirt block, you would understand why. Here I made a notch to show that this side of the curve is my zipper allowance, is where my zipper allowance is facing. So I'm going to come to this place where I made the notch. Alright, this is like 8 inches after minus the ½ inch of sewn allowance at the waist area. This 8 inches away from the top. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this 8 inches and I'll sew 2 inches from here all the way down to the end. Make sure it's 2 inches consistently. I will do the same thing on my lining as well, lining of the back. Alright, so now after you have done this, next thing is for us to install our zipper. Alright, so I kept 2 inches for my zipper. I'm going to simply install the zipper. If you don't know how to install the zipper, I have a video on how to do that. So I'm going to simply install my zipper from here, 2 inches all the way down, and then we'll be back to attach the lining. So after installing the zipper, I'm going to simply place sew the both of them on this way. So keep the clean side of the lining facing the clean side of the fabric, and I'm going to join them at the waist. But I'm going to start shortly before the darts. I'm not going to start from the very beginning. Then I will sew straight into this one and I will stop right after the darts. So while locking the waist part at the zip area, we're going to leave this side here open. Watch what I'm doing. So after making the stitch across the waist, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to join the fabric and the lining together at the zipper. So we want to neaten up the zipper. So you're going to pick up, you see, the parts that are joined together, and you want to stitch as close to the stitch that you used to attach your zip as possible. All right. So when you're done with that, you turn it inside out, you will see that you have attached your zipper neatly. So that's the inside, this is the outside. Alright, so now the next thing I'm going to do, we're going to join some parts of the waist. This is the front of the skirt. Alright, so I'm going to come a little bit before the dart and just make a stitch and stop a little bit after. So after you have stitched some parts of the waist, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to join the front to the back of the skirt on the side. So you see here, I'm going to join my allowance that I kept of 1.5 inches everywhere on the side. Alright, everywhere on the side. Alright, so after you have joined this side, you're going to repeat the same thing on the lining. But when I'm stitching the lining, I'm not going to stitch everywhere from top to bottom. I'm going to basically start from here, stitch 1.5. When I'm like 4 inches in, oh god. So as I was saying, we're going to do the same thing to the lining. We're going to start from 1.5 inches. When we're like 4 inches in, I'll back stitch and lock it. Keep a space of like 5 inches before I continue to sew the 1.5 all the way down. Alright? Alright, so you can see I've kept the space here on the other side of the skirt. Alright, I'm still going to join the fabric the same way all the way down. On the lining, I'm not going to keep that space. So remember, I made a stitch, stopped, locked it, came down and continued, and left a hole to be able to access the lining at any time. But on this other side here, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just hold 1.5 from the top all the way down, like I'll do on the fabric. Alright, so next I'm going to go and iron all the seams flat on the fabric and on the lining, then I'll be back. Alright, so now after you have ironed everything flat, like I said, you're going to come back to the waist. Now remember that place where you stopped stitching, all the stitches you didn't complete. Alright, that's the one over here, and this one we're now going to complete it. We're going to simply sew from here all the way down on both of the holes that we have on the joining at the waist. Alright, so with that we are done with the top part of the skirt. The next step is to move to the mid section. Alright, so the first step is we're going to join the zipper allowance that we had at the bottom on this side. Alright, so whatever zipper allowance you had, just make sure to grab it. So I have 1 inch at this bottom. I'm going to hold 1 inch on the fabric and on the lining. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to head back to my ironing table, and I'm going to spread and iron this part here flat on both the fabric and on the lining. Alright, and then I'm going to join the fabric and the lining together. The fabric, first of all, the lining to lining, and then fabric to fabric on the sides. Alright, so on the sides I'm going to join them together, consuming 1 inch on the left and 1 inch on the right. Alright, after you've done that, the middle part of the skirt is complete. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the loops that are supposed to be here. So what you're going to do first is you're going to cut a fabric that is 2 inches wide, alright, but you cut it to be very, very long so that you can hem it and then trim it down to 5-inch strips that we'll use for our linkage. You see what I'm talking about? Alright, so this is what I was saying. You cut a piece of fabric that's 2 inches wide, as long as you can. Here I have 2. I'm going to simply fold. We're just trying to make a little loop, so half inch, and then collapse it. And I'm going to stitch on one side all the way down to create a loop. Alright, so now we need to cut 8 pieces. We're going to use 4 for the front and 4 at the back, so we need them to be 5 inches long. Alright, so now it's time for us to plant the loops into the skirt. We're going to measure from the joining to joining. So here I have my tapes. My tape is sitting at like 9 inches in the middle, so like 17.5, so approximately 9 inches in the middle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the middle, 1, 2.5, and I'm going to make a mark there. Still come to the middle, 1, 2.5, make a mark here. So that's 2.5 inches away from the midline first, and then after this marking I'm going to come 1, 2, 3, or what you can do is you can come like so. That's 3 inches after the mark you have here, and we're going to make a mark. Alright, then do the same thing here, 4 inches after where you have it, you make the mark. Alright, sorry, here 4 inches after the first mark. Alright, do the same thing at the back. Just simply replicate these lines at the back. So first from the middle 3 inches, then 4 inches. After you have done that, I want you to turn the whole skirt inside out. Alright, so we're going to start stitching the fabric and the lining together at the bottom. Now when we are doing this, wherever you see a blue mark, you are going to plant a loop inside. You are going to see me do it. I'm stitching 1/2 inch for my sewing allowance. Alright, with that we finished planting the loop. This is when we are going to use this hole we left on the side. Alright, so after you've turned everything inside out and it's all good, the next thing would be to shut the hole. So you see the hole that's left here. The next thing would be simply to make a stitch across to seal it shut, or you can use hemming tape to seal it shut. But I'm going to make a stitch from here to here. Alright, so now it's time to join the mid section. Alright, so you're going to make sure that you mark all the places like you did before, so that you know where everything is going to land. I'm going to mark behind it as well. The next thing is to stitch it on. So we're going to start from the first part, which is here. We want to turn it inside out, like so. And then bring the corresponding part of the lining. So this is the front. See this joining I have here? Alright, I have a joining here. So I'm going to make sure you the side joining you have, not the zip space. And you're going to align it there. We're going to start from here, start planting before we plant this one. I hope that you're not lost, but you see what I'm doing here. Alright, so we're going to start stitching here, then we'll plant all of them one after the other. With that, we have joined the mid part of the skirt. Alright, so now we're on to the last part. Now if you see, we cut the fabric and the lining the same length. Now this is the back where we kept our zipper allowance. We cut the fabric and the lining the same length, but we don't need them to be the same length. We need the lining to be shorter. So I'm going to cut the lining 3 inches shorter. This is so that it pulls the fabric inside. By the time we force them to be together, it will pull the whole thing inside. Now that we've done that, we're going to hold the zipper allowance by 1 inch on the fabric and on the lining. Alright, so this is the front. Alright, this is the front, the bottom half of the front. We're still going to have to reduce the lining here by 3 inches as well. Alright, then we're going to join fabric to fabric and lining to lining. We're going to join 1 inch on the left and on the right. Do the same thing on the lining as well. Alright, the next step is to mark the bottom of where you made the last, where you attach the last loop. That's the one on top. You can see what I'm doing. Just simply mark right below where the previous one was. Do the same thing at the back. With that done, it's time to attach the straps to the bottom half. Alright, so have you ever worked on a skirt so complex before? If you want to do it neatly, it has to be this way. Alright, so what we're going to do is this. We're going to take it step by step. First thing you want to do, you're going to hold both ends like this, because there's no hole anywhere. This place here is too small, alright, to twist this whole skirt out of. So what we're going to do is you're going to simply just hold it like this. You're going to turn it inside out. It's going to get difficult once you start stitching, but turn it like that first. Then arrange everything. Then we're going to start stitching. To get progressively harder as we stitch deeper and deeper, but just start from that edge that you have there, and then you're going to plant in the straps as you sew along. By the time it gets too difficult and you can't twist anymore, you stop and go, and I'll show you how to continue. Alright, and then you see, by the time I stitched and got to this point, the whole thing got so twisted and it was a bit difficult to sew. So I'm going to come back and continue from the other side where we started from before. Alright. Alright, so now we have stitched all around, and you can see that we've planted it neatly. The last thing we have is this hole over here. So in order to have a seamless look all around, what I would advise you do is you take hemming gum, alright, and you put it in between here when you are ironing this part, and that's going to seal out this hole neatly. That's where you don't have any threads showing at the top or at the bottom. So hemming gum is what you must use to seal this edge over here so that everything is clean. Let me get the bottom half and show you how we round this up. Alright, so we're on to the last part of the skirt. But if you want to do it neatly, yes, it can be. So what we're going to do is this. You're going to come to your zipper allowance. You see where you have the zipper allowance over here? That's at the back here. And you see the way I'm placing the lining. You want to place the lining and the fabric front facing front, and just tack it here, alright? Just a little tap, you hold it there. Going to turn the lining back the other way. Be sure that all is well. Alright? Everything is fine. So let me get the body so that I show you what to do. So over here we have top parts. So this part here is one that's supposed to go here, and this other one is supposed to go here. And that's exactly what we're going to do. You see this one? We're going to plant it inside here where we marked and catch it. Oh no, let's start from this other one. Alright, so keep it straight like this so that it doesn't get twisted, and you catch it in between, flip the whole thing around. Now we're going to continue the stitch. Alright, so at time we're done with that. This is the front. You can see that we have attached all the loops. Alright, be careful when you're attaching the loops so that you don't take the one in the front and put at the back, or the one at the back and put at the front. Better still, use a pin and secure it all the way around before you make your stitch. But yeah, time to make the last stitch. And that's at the end over here. Alright, we're going to come to either the side or to the zipper allowance. So what I'm doing here, simply just flip it inside out, and we're going to make a stitch from here until we can't stitch anymore. Alright, when you can't stitch anymore, you will see a hole that you have here. Now because your lining is shorter than your fabric, this place will be pulled in so that your hem will just be, the fabric bent. So here you can either still use your hemming gum and finish it off, or like me, I'll just make a stitch from here all the way down. After you make this stitch, you are pretty much done. It's just to iron everything out. And if you've watched this far, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.